The electric and magnetic fluids underlie the elements. If someone has a look at Agrippa's description of the elements, he gives a reasonable theoretical outline of the relationship between the elements and the fluids, even though he doesn't really talk about the fluids that much. So if the elements, shall we deal with the four elements mainly, if they are the tetrapolar nature, which all human beings have, the magnetic and electric fluids are the fundamental duality that precedes that. So that is why, for example, Bardon shows you how to load the elements, the fluids from the elements. So, for example, he talks about the first step is to surround yourself, having trained through many steps, with the fire element, and then you draw the electric fluid into yourself from that element. And then having loaded it into yourself, that fire element is then dispersed, leaving you with its underlying basis, the electric fluid. Similarly, with the magnetic fluid, he gives a similar method with water. Again, you've trained yourself with the elements. You surround yourself with water, you feel its coldness, all the rest of it, and you draw into yourself from it the magnetic fluid. You do not bring the water in, you do not load the water stays outside, you draw the magnetic fluid in, and then you disperse the water. So this is why Bardon says, blessed is the magician who has his two hands, one with the magnetic and the other with the electric, because that can be used for many positive or healing things. And you can feel them. You can feel the difference between the elements and the fluids. So when you work with, let's deal with the water one, for example, you load the water, you can feel the coldness around you, and then you dispel the water, and you can feel the energy of the magnetic fluid in you. It's different. It's not the same as the water element. It was part of the water element. You just kind of drew it out, and then you got rid of the water, and you had this other energy that's now in you. For example, that's inductively you drew it into yourself. It's the same with the fire. You feel the heat of the fire, and it is very electric. You get rid of the fire, you've loaded the electric fluid, and you can feel it all over your skin. You can feel it, and then you Bardon rightly directs you avoid the heart when you concentrate it into the arm and down to the hand, and you can feel it can almost become quite painful if you overdo it a bit. And then obviously that leads on to vaulting. I don't want to just repeat Bardon's training. People can enjoy that for themselves by reading that. But essentially, you draw it out of the elements. Eventually, you do it deductively. You don't need to rely on the initial Paul briefing methodology that you learned, but you can still use that. But you can also do it just by what could be termed force of will, and you load the fluid. You can and then you start to feel the fluid. The magnetic fluid isn't electric, but it is kind of, it's not an electric fluid, but it does feel it's the opposite of electric fluid, and yet it does have that if we talk about voltage in electronics and electrical stuff, voltage and tension, there is a tension, and it is strongly analogous. It's not so easy to describe, but you can feel it, and it does make your body tingle. So the interesting thing is, the first few times you do it, let's say you've got your electric on your right side, you've got your magnetic on the other side. You can feel them, and they're different to how the elements felt, the water and the fire respectively. They feel different, and you, by doing this, you develop a an understanding of their relationship between the elements and the fluids. So the connection is perceived. So the question is, can anyone help explain the connection between the elements and the fluids? By loading the fluids from the elements, you see the connection, but it's not possible to actually explain it, but you see it. Maybe someone can. I don't know. Maybe someone can explain it in intellectual terms, but you draw it out of the element, you dispel the element, you feel it in you. It's not the element, it's the fluid. It's different, but it comes from and is connected to the element. So you can see how it's actually, you've actually done it the other way round. You've inverted what actually happens. The fluid emerges and then the element comes from the fluid. What you've done is you've got hold of the element and in reverse taken the fluid out of the element. So it's in kind of reverse to the way it naturally progresses in creation, but it's experiential. The connection is experiential, and well, the connection in intellectual terms is the fluids underpin the elements. The elements wouldn't exist without the fluids, but the actual experience of the fluids and seeing how they are drawn from, or perceiving, should I say, how they are drawn from the element as you do it. And then the difference between the fluid with the element and the fluid without the element is a somewhat more than one can simply explain, which is why Bardon doesn't bother to explain it. It just shows you how to do it so that you can see for yourself.